So we had a request for a video, the costs and realities of owning a woodland. So what we've decided to do is to fulfill that request and talk about today exactly what it costs in ongoing finances when you actually own a woodland. Don't know if you can hear it, but there's a buzzard circling overhead and he's really loud. I think he's landed in the trees. Oh, he's gone that way. Anyway, back to business. So you purchase the woodland. Couple of things to bear in mind when you first get started is obviously there's going to be costs involved actually looking for a woodland, mainly travel. Obviously, if you're looking like we did within a 2-hour radius, then you're going to have to factor in fuel, maybe lunch out somewhere, but that's pretty standard. Don't think I need to teach you that sort of thing. When actually purchasing, the costs that I think are often forgotten, first and foremost, it's solicitor's fees. We used a solicitor. We would highly recommend that you do that. I've talked about it in the top tips video, the purchase process video that we've got. Personally, that was really important to us, that we got it right, that we knew exactly what we were buying and we had all the checks done and everything like that. Also, when you're in the process of buying, you might want to get a survey. So a survey of a woodland isn't like a house survey. You're not actually looking at whether the building is safe, is there anything like that. What you might want to do is get a forestry professional to come and have a look at the woodland itself, give you their honest opinion of its health, the way it's made up, the form of the trees, because obviously it depends what you want to do with those trees, that sort of thing. So you might want to pay for a forestry professional. So that's a cost to bear in mind as well. Check if there's any agent fees. We used one of the main woodland sales agents and there weren't actually any fees associated with that. Obviously, if you're selling woodland, I'm guessing there would be an agent fee. So they are the costs that I think we forget from the very beginning. And then we get into the actual day-to-day annual running costs as well. So first of all, annual insurance. We got insurance from literally the day that the woodland became ours. The reason for that is you need public liability. It's a very sad fact that there have been cases of people coming into woodlands that are privately owned. So essentially it's trespassing. And those people have then come to some harm. Maybe they've fallen down a hole, maybe a tree's fallen on them, and they've actually sued the woodland owner. Another thing for insurance, if there are any buildings, properties that aren't yours near to the woodland, if you're near a road, you have to bear in mind that if storm comes in, tree falls, damages a property, damages a passing vehicle, and hopefully not a human, but these things do happen, you're going to need insurance to be able to cover you for that sort of thing. We've got woodland insurance. It is around about £200 per year. It covers public liability, and it also covers us for any volunteers working in the woodland. It doesn't cover anybody that we may pay. So if we had an arborist come in to maybe deal with a specific tree, they would need their own insurance because they're a business person. But if we have friends, family coming on the site helping us with tasks, if they were to have an accident and decided to make a claim, then the insurance covers that. Another big cost for us is, so our tiny woodland is 40 miles away from our home, which takes us 45-50 minutes. And we worked out the fuel costs for our car. We do have a hybrid car, but we do have to pay for fuel. Now, we did the maths on that and we worked it out. For the 80-mile round trip each time, it's about 10 quid. So we do factor into that because we live on a budget, as a lot of people do, and we have to look at exactly what we're spending. So we did factor in the fuel for travel. Things like courses for chainsaw use. So again, our insurance only covers us for chainsaw use if we've got the correct PPE, the correct training. So it might be that if you're going to be using a chainsaw, you've never used one before, it might be that you want to pay and do a course. You're using a chainsaw, you need the PPE if you're going to do it safely. Obviously, that's a personal decision. I'm not going to judge anybody who decides not to use PPE or get trained or anything like that. But it was something that we sort of wanted to factor in. Tools. You're going to need tools. If you haven't already got them, you might already have them. That's absolutely great. So we invested in a silky saw because they are the best. And to be honest, it's been wonderful. We also invested in a small Laplander saw. Don't like to do the gender stereotypes, but Dan uses the silky because it's larger and he's a bit stronger than me, and I use the Laplander because it's smaller, it's a little bit more dainty. But both are good. Have a look into how those work as well, because they cut differently, can be used for different things, but those two things were absolutely essential for us. Like I've said before, we wanted to use hand tools as much as possible. We do have a small chainsaw. It's actually marketed as a pruner, but it looks like a really mini chainsaw. But another big one that we bought was the scythe. So I bought the scythe from a well-known scythe place in Wales, highly recommended. Came with a couple of blades, came with a peening kit, all of that, and it was a few £100. But for us, it enables us to mow the rides without any fuel, any electricity or batteries that need charging. So essentially, we could have spent similar on a strimmer and things like that. So the scythe was another thing, and just your regular tools like hand pruners and things like that. We do have Mora knives, which are the bushcraft knives. We have about 4 of those, 2 each, all slightly different styles, but Mora are very affordable. Very easy to maintain. They come with a little sheath that you can just clip onto your belt. And to be honest, walking around the woodland, you're constantly in need of a knife anyway, for lots of different reasons. So bush knives are a really good idea. And sort of ongoing maintenance costs. If your woodland is fenced, then obviously, so if that's for deer control, for whatever reason, you're going to have to factor in maintenance of that fence, whether you do it yourself, whether you pay somebody to do it, but fences don't last forever. Same with gates. Gates, we've got a metal gate here, but you might, it's actually got a wooden frame, so at some point that may need replacing. So factor in those sorts of things. Wild cams might be more of a choice, but for us, they were essential from day one. So check out our wildcam video. What did we catch? I talk about the costings in there and the wildcams that we use and how we get on with them. Last thing there to think about is signage. So we have got a couple of little signs up in the woodland, same private woodland. The main reason for that is to discourage dog walkers, people with dogs off the leads, because we do have ground nesting birds here. And when Dan and I are here, we follow the paths, we kind of know the areas that we've left to go a bit wilder where these birds might be. But somebody coming onto the land, again, you might say trespassing, you might say everybody has the right to roam, but this is a wildlife conservation site for us, and we really want to protect those birds. If you've ever seen any of the videos about dogs off the leads, just pillaging nests, it's heartbreaking. So we did pay for some signs. They're very small, they're very unobtrusive, but it's just to remind people, it is a private woodland, but it is a conservation woodland as well. So, if they then choose to come onto the land, at least we've made them aware of that. There are other costs that you might have at home that you don't have in a woodland. So, for example, top of the list for most people is council tax. We have to pay it for all of the services that we receive when we live in a residential property. However, with a woodland, there's no council tax. We don't have any bin collections here, that sort of thing. So we don't have council tax. We don't have running water on site. We don't have electricity on site. We don't have gas. So we don't pay any of those standing charges or any of those bills. It's worth bearing in mind to check when you purchase to see if there are any ongoing costs though, because here our tiny woodland is in the beautiful South Lincolnshire Fens. So we're on fenland. If you know anything about fenland, it is constantly drained. So the woodland is surrounded by drainage ditches and there's some larger dikes further down. So here we do have to pay a yearly drainage charge for that, which we're happy to do. And per year, it comes to the grand total of £8. So that just gives you an idea. But check when you purchase just to see if there's any hidden costs like that. Optional costs are the next one. So we did spend a bit of money when we first started coming to the woodland. We had a lot of camping gear. So we had a tent for shelter, we had tarps, we had camping kettles, we had a tripod barbecue that we used. So the things that we then had to spend money on initially was the compost toilet. Again, that didn't actually cost much because I think we only had to pay for the screws because we salvaged the scaffolding boards. We had used the old toilet seat from home that the soft close had actually broken on. Oh, got a bee joining me. So yeah, we had to put that in, and obviously we had a small shovel that we used to flush. We had to buy a waterproof container to put the flush in, so we had to shell out for that. You're going to want shelter, so in the summer a tarp or a tent, just in case there's a cloudburst, is fine. You might already have those, you might want to actually buy them. We needed, as I've said before, we needed a permanent hide for our pest controller, and we also needed a forestry shelter for ourselves because we do a lot of the work in winter, the really heavy work we do in winter. And there have been days here when physical work, physical exertion hasn't been enough to keep us warm. So we've got the dandy, which we use as shelter and to warm up in between jobs because it has got a heater in it. So we bought the dandy, and I think the dandy was about £300. Fetched it from a town near to us locally, brought it to the woodland, got it in. So we did pay out for that. You might want to look at a rainwater collection. We do have the tarps on top of the dandy, which go into a water butt, which we didn't buy the water butt, we salvaged that as well, we were given it, because we wanted water on site to be able to fill the mini pond and maybe the bigger pond when that's finished. Also, you're going to need water if you're planting saplings because they may well need help with water in their first year. So a rainwater collection system is another optional cost. You're going to want a couple of benches, we would think, because we did. We made one bench ourselves, we were gifted another one, and another one we bought from a local charity in the town that we live in and transported it here. You're probably going to want a fire pit, you're going to want a barbecue, all of those things. Again, camping kit is just great for coming for days when you're off grid. We also invested in some really good water transport containers, which are still going strong. We take those home, we clean them out. They've got a hole enough big so I can get my arm in, really wash them out, make sure the water's safe. Because we do have to bring all the water for drinking on site with us when we come. I've mentioned tree planting, so another optional cost. If you decide you maybe want to start thinning or management, and then you might want to get a woodland management plan, which I'll cover in a second as well, you're going to want to factor in buying new trees because that may well be something. Now, there are grants available. I'll let you do your own research into that. Another thing that we have decided to, well, we haven't actually spent any money yet, but we might have to, but the pond, the big pond, it didn't cost us anything to dig it because we already had a shovel, we already had a wheelbarrow that we brought to site, and we were going to try and do puddling clay, but decided against that because we're not experts. So we decided to go with a pond liner, and would you believe, just the other day we were gifted one that is the perfect size. So we haven't spent any money on that yet, but we might. We'll see. Other things, you might want to do nest boxes for birds. You might want to do nest boxes for the mice, things like that. You also might want to put feeders up. We only have feeders for the pest control aspect of things. What we aim to do is diversify this woodland, get it healthier so that it can feed the birds itself. So we've got hazelnuts, we've got berries, rowan, hawthorn, sloes. We really want to sort of, encourage the natural food so that we're not, encouraging any kind of reliance that the birds might have on us. So they are the optional costs. If you can think of any more, if you're a woodland owner or you're thinking of buying woodland, you think of anything else, please put in the comments because I'd love to know. For us, we have found that by far the biggest cost, and it's a pleasurable cost, is time. Once you've got all your kit and various things, the only thing left is for you yourself to put the time into the woodland. So what do we spend our time doing? So the rides need mowing. We're mosaicing the open spaces, the glades. We want to go from bare earth for the reptiles to bask. We want to go short grass, longer grass, herb layer, all the way hedgerow, and then the standard trees. So we are gently easing our way into that, and we've started doing that. So that takes time. Scything is probably, I think, as quick as strimming, to be honest. So, you know, but it does take the time. You're going to spend a bit of time maybe dealing with storm damage. So we've got grey squirrels here who strip the bark. Before we intervened and started managing that, they had damaged lots and lots of the crowns, specifically of the oak. And what happens then, the crown dies, and then you get a storm, as we started having in recent years, not this time of year, but you get a storm and those crowns come down, and sometimes they're suspended in the trees, and it's not safe to have people walking, you know, underneath and past them. So there is a bit of time spent on things like that. So fallen trees as well. If you do have a tree fall, maybe it's across a ride or it's in the way for access, you're going to have time doing that. You might have to put some time into things like bramble control, bracken control, rhododendron if you've got that. If you watch the top tips video, I do talk a little bit about that as well. So you know, it's just all about putting the time in. So on to the things that were unexpected, the unexpected realities for us. I have mentioned before that I wanted a woodland that was magical, Shakespearean. I imagined myself as Titania in the woods with all the fairies. I knew it wasn't going to be like that, and I didn't want it to be like that really, but you do have these little fantasies. So what we've discovered is managing woodland. Number one, everything takes longer than you think it's going to. Woodland time is a concept that we have become used to. Time moves differently when you're here, when we're here. We say we're going to do this, 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 and this. When we arrive, we've maybe got a list, we've got an ongoing list of things that need doing. Everything takes much longer than you think it's going to. So factor that in. In winter, it's muddy, it can be miserable, it can be cold, frozen ground, slipping over, falling over. I'm renowned for it. I can't stay upright on the best of days. So, you know, there is a hardship there, but I think if you go in with the right positive mental attitude, it just becomes part of what you're doing. And again, you know, the weather makes things take much longer. Tools are always going to fail. Like I say, we've got the scythe that hasn't failed yet, although I have had the blade fall off before when I haven't put it on properly because I've not been concentrating, because I've seen a robin or a deer, and you know, I've lost what I'm doing and I've not been concentrating. So but you know, bear in mind, you might make the journey with your chainsaw and you get there and for whatever reason it's not working. So you just have to suck it up and think, well, I'll just come and enjoy myself for the day instead. Talking about the robin, the deer, procrastination is a huge problem. We've got 2 hammocks, and part of me wishes that we'd never bought them, because we arrive, we bring all our tools, we have our plan for the day. I get the kettle on, make a drink, we sit down, we have a chat about what we're going to do, and then we just sit and sit and watch and listen. Before you know it, an hour's gone by before we've even started working. And okay, that is valuable time. If you're surveying birds, you know, you're looking at I noticed a brand new wildflower earlier on as I was walking around, always do a quick tour, make sure everything's okay. And I was 15 minutes just marvelling at this meadow buttercup that had appeared out of seemingly nowhere. So procrastination is a huge issue. The more serious side to it is we have got a felling license. That was one of the first things that we applied for because we knew that we wanted to fell to thin because our tiny woodland is still very, very choked. It's in all the straight rows it was planted in. That needs thinning out so that, you know, things can flourish. So applied for a felling license. There was no actual cost to that. I did that online, and it was approved. So we got the felling license. And then shortly after that, the government changed the guidelines. The Rural Payments Agency changed the guidelines so that the Woodland Management Plan grant funding actually now covers smaller woodlands. So it meant that we could apply for that grant, which we did. We got a forestry professional in, and the grant covered the services of the forestry professional. But the unexpected reality of going from felling license to management plan for us was that our priorities changed, because it was around about sort of I would say from 6 months of ownership through to 2 years of ownership. We were formulating the management plan. We had visits from the forestry professional. We discussed everything. We did surveys, lots and lots of work. But as we went through and we got to know the woodland even more, we realised that our priorities were changing in terms of what we wanted to do. One of the things that the forestry professional brought up was the timber value of some of the oak that we've got here. We never ever planned or even considered the possibility of selling wood. But he said to us, you know, some of these oak, when our grandchildren have grandchildren, could be worth a few quid. So it'd be worth, you know, factoring that into the management plan, doing some management techniques to make sure they grow as well as possible. And that was something that we took on board and we decided to do. So we hadn't initially decided to do that. So that's some of the unexpected realities. I'm sure there's been downsides. We've had a few injuries here. I gashed my arm, still got a scar when we were taking tree guards off. Dan boinked his head and I had to bandage him up. Always essential to have a first aid kit, a full first aid kit on site, because you just never know. So, yeah. So, talking about cost, can a woodland make any money? A lot of people in the woodland communities or who are thinking about buying woodland specifically want the woodland to, in a small way maybe, pay for itself. Personally, that wasn't something that we considered. However, there are ways that you can make a bit of money if you own a woodland. The first one that comes to mind for everybody, I think, is firewood. So we have a multi-fuel burner at home that we use for heating the house. And so now we're in a position where we have got a free source of firewood. So that has saved us money. Not much money, but it has saved us some money. Excuse me, I just swallowed, I think it was a mozzie. Just have a bit of coffee. Good old camping mug, my bucket as I call it. So firewood, you can make your own charcoal if you want to. We have made charcoal on a really small scale, just using a little tin, because Dan likes sketching, I like sketching, and we use it in the toilet as well. But some people have bought woodlands and they have actually managed to get permission to live in the woodland because they've started a charcoal business. Few and far between. However, I'm always fascinated to hear about these people and what they've done, because I think it's absolutely wonderful. Traditional crafts, living on the land, living off the land. It's great. Coppicing products, again, would fall into that category. Coppicing, the sadly dying art that some people are starting to bring back, which is wonderful to see, and it is something that we do here. The products that we're going to get from our coppicing, we will use within the woodland, so deer protection, things like that. But possibly you could make money from it. I do know of people who coppice on a very small scale who have deals done with allotments, and they provide all the bean sticks and pea sticks at a very small cost. The other thing that you can look at doing is running courses, doing maybe forest bathing, doing wildlife walks, tours that you can maybe charge people for. The one thing to bear in mind with this is the forestry use of the land. So if you check I think it's the Town and Country Planning Act, but I can't remember. I'll put it up here for you to see, because I read this to be sure of what we were doing. Forestry land has to be used for forestry purposes. So you find if you come in here and you're working, looking after trees, planting trees, woodland management is all fine. That's what the Forestry Commission wants people to be doing, is managing these woodlands. However, you do get a 28-day per year change of use. So if, for example, we come here with friends to have a barbecue and we don't pick up a single tool or do anything, that comes under the 28-day change of use. If we wanted to run a forest bathing session and charge people for that, that would come under the 28-day use, but we would have to get additional insurance for that, because it wouldn't be us on the land, it wouldn't be members of the public, it would, you know, we would be running a business. So you need to be very sure about what you're going to use your woodland for. And obviously there's things like YouTube. We're active on social media. We've got the Instagram and we've got this YouTube channel. We aren't monetized on social media. If I'm actually perfectly honest with you, I don't know how that works. Not really looked into it. I certainly on Instagram, I've got no idea. I know on YouTube, you've got to have so many followers and so many watch hours. So that seems like we'd never achieve that, because we're just a little woodland channel. It's quite a niche thing. But maybe you are really into bushcraft, and you might want to use those 28 days a year to do 28 sections of 24-hour filming doing bushcraft shelters and things like that. That kind of channel will probably blow up quite well. So you can look into the other avenues of making money from a woodland, but it's never going to pay for it, I don't think. So just be aware of that. So the last bit that I want to talk about is the benefits that you can't put a price on. We have seen ourselves grow as people. We've changed. We've enjoyed the work that we've done because we have seen the difference that it's starting to make in terms of the woodland health. So we've seen just today, the wildflower I mentioned, we drove down the ride. We're seeing more diversity in grasses, more butterflies this year. There were clouds of butterflies, dragonflies that we've not seen before. So that sense of achievement and pride in what we've done as giving back to the wild world is you know, a benefit to us that we really value, and it feels better than we thought it would feel. We've done all this for that reason, and it, you know, brings me to tears on occasion. So leading nicely on for that is the mental health. I would encourage anybody, whether you own a woodland, whether you want to own a woodland, whether you're never interested in buying a woodland, to consider spending more time around trees. It was something that Dan and I always did. We loved walking in woodlands. We're lucky to have a few locally to where we live. The peace, the quiet, and the mindfulness of being away from technology. She says sat looking at her mobile phone, but you get the gist. Being just away from the hustle, the bustle of the world we live in that is just instant gratification. You visit a woodland, any woodland, on a regular basis, you see how it changes slowly, gradually through the seasons, but it's always moving forward. It's always reinventing itself, and it brings you back down to, you know, a more mindful state of being. And we both find that stays with us in the weeks or days after we've visited, this sense of calm. And that leads into forest bathing. I am going to do a forest bathing video because it's something that I do here. Dan, not so much. I think he does it without realising though. But don't tell him I said that. So, like I said, it affects your mental health and it affects, you know, your life outside. It can change your priorities. We still live what we probably call a simple life. We live in a very small house. We drive a 10-year-old car. We shop at Aldi. We don't go on holiday very often, although we are going this year as a bit of a treat. Um, and it's really cemented with us how, for us personally, I'm not saying for everybody, everybody should live their life, do the things, buy the things that make you happy. That's really important. But for us, it's taken us back down to basics. We don't sweat the small stuff anymore. We don't hanker after, you know, the new sofa, the new telly, all of that. We make do, we mend. Because, you know, when you come into a woodland and you see the wildlife and you see how simplistic it is, yet so effective it is, and how it's just joyful, then I think, you know, it does shift your sort of, you know, priorities. The other good thing, unexpected benefit that you can't put a price on is physical health. Forest bathing has been proven to reduce blood pressure, and the physical activity that we have to do here to manage the woodland, bring down the trees, process the hazel coppice, all of that, we've both got a lot fitter. I've lost a bit of weight, so has Dan. You know, and we're finding that we're much more agile. We're both so Dan's just over 50, I'm just under 50, and we've noticed massive physical effects of, you know, just physically doing more. We did have an allotment before, so we did a lot of physical stuff there, but this is even more physical. I mean, you know, lifting heavy logs and all that sort of stuff. It's great, absolutely great. And we've learned new skills, and there's nothing better for an old perimenopausal brain than to get those synapses firing when you're learning a new skill. And for me, that's given me a little bit more confidence in myself, because I think you can lose confidence in perimenopause and that sort of thing. Hormones are all over the place. So it's really helped with my confidence. And, you know, I'm sat here talking to you on camera on a public video. 2-3 years ago, I would never have contemplated doing this. The woodland herself has changed me so much. I no longer give any fluffs what anybody thinks about me. I didn't really before, but, you know, it just gives you this confidence, and you know, you get so passionate about something that you want to share it with others because you found this beautiful thing. So yeah, it does massively change you. And I think, you know, another sort of benefit that you can't put a price on is we both now know that we are going to leave a piece of nature in a better state than when we first found it. And you really can't put a price on that at all, I don't think. So, costs and realities of owning a woodland. I hope I've covered everything. Please let me know if I've missed anything, because I ain't perfect by a long chalk. I think when you're looking at woodland ownership, the act of becoming a woodland owner, the moment of legal completion takes a moment. And then you wait, you get your piece of paper. They're isolated incidents. Stewardship of a woodland lasts a lifetime. And I think, you know, that's the most important thing. The biggest cost is time, really, after the initial purchase. The biggest reality is it will potentially, like for me and Dan, potentially change your life. So if you're in a position to consider buying woodland, protecting it, serving it, we have zero regrets. Absolutely zero regrets. In fact, no, the only one is we wish we'd done it sooner. So, you know, if you are considering it, please take it as a positive. We have had a wonderfully positive experience. If you've enjoyed this video, take a look at our others. I've mentioned a few of them. We have got the 4 parts of the Woodland Walk out now, which I filmed a couple of weeks ago. So you'll be able to see the main areas of the woodland and have a look at those, just so that you know what I'm talking about when I'm blathering on in these videos. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps with the visibility for the channel, helps us get our message out there, and we really appreciate if you drop us a like as well. So thank you for watching, and bye bye.